So it's here. It's finally here. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom has released worldwide. And there's a lot of people playing this game and experiencing this game because there was a lot of hype around this game. It was probably my most anticipated game of 2023. I mean, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4 were definitely up there, but nothing was quite as high as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. That might surprise you because I'm not a Nintendo YouTuber, but the Legend of Zelda series is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. Whereas many people started out with the NES side of things, I didn't get into it until the N64. I didn't have a Super Nintendo. I didn't have Zelda on the NES. It was Ocarina of Time that really just was crazy. You know, it was such a crazy experience, such a crazy game. And Breath of the Wild was kind of that new Zelda experience that everyone had been looking for, that everyone had been wondering, you know, when the series was going to take that leap. It had become very formulaic. You know, you knew what you were doing. You knew what to expect with the Zelda game, but Breath of the Wild was completely different. After Breath of the Wild released in 2017, though, of course, you have to start thinking about the sequel to the game, which ended up becoming The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. An interesting run-up in terms of promotion of this game. You know, there was lots of secrecy, the $70 price point for this game as well, coming to us from Nintendo. And I fully planned on reviewing this game, like doing a full review of it, this, that, and the other. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. It's not, I've been playing this game quite a bit. Beyond just the fact that I bought it on the Australian eShop. I paid extra for that. I have the collector's edition coming in as well. But I also was playing it maybe a little bit before it because I wanted to be able to do a timely review of this game. But I realized something. I refuse to review this game. I refuse to review The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I'm going to explain to you guys why, because I feel like my reasoning is sound, but there's so much stuff that I could talk about with this game and tell you guys all about. I could talk about the deep story of the game. This probably has one of the deeper stories in any Legend of Zelda game. Maybe Majora's Mask is kind of up there. That was a really good story. It just didn't have the gameplay to match it for me personally. But I feel like this story is so good because of the fact that, unlike in Breath of the Wild, you don't necessarily have to seek it out. You know, that was the whole thing about Breath of the Wild. There was that overarching story, but as far as like getting actual story elements from the game itself, it was like pulling hairs. You had to go to a certain place and talk to a certain person and seek out the story. Whereas this game, it's a lot more traditional. You know, the first 20 minutes of The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, the story is thrusted into your face. And I like that. I like these storytelling mechanics because a lot of these story elements that you come across are fully voice acted and all the voice acting sounds really good. I really like the fact that it seems to have a deeper narrative and a mystery surrounding it. Once you hit the ground of Hyrule from the Sky Island, you start out in the Sky Island, then you come down to Hyrule, then the story even picks up even more. I was kind of anticipating you would just get this little, you know, burst of story at the start, and then everything would kind of go back to status quo, but that isn't really the case at all with this game. The story continues. The story keeps growing, keeps evolving with different side branches and side paths and stuff like that. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And it's probably one of the more captivating stories in a Legend of Zelda game as well. I could talk about the new mechanics that the game has to offer. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of new stuff in this game, such as being able to rewind time, the Ultra Hand, in which you could craft things together, the Fuse mechanic, which allows you to create new weapons. I could go super in depth with all of that and tell you guys how it transforms the way you play this game. Because like I said, I have been playing this game a little bit early, you know, through other means or whatever. We're not going to get too far into that. But I've noticed that my second time going through and playing through the game on my Australian eShop download, I played it very differently. I solved puzzles in a different manner. I did things in a different manner. My progression was through a different manner. And these mechanics, they become more and more prevalent as you're walking around, as you're doing things, what you can actually do with these mechanics. Even though they give them to you very early on in the game, you're constantly learning more things that you can do with these mechanics. And that's brilliant because what's happening is your mind is kind of expanding. You're thinking about things in a different manner than you were originally thinking before. That's, you know, sometimes it could get a little bit wonky attaching things to another thing, but you know, for the most part, it just allows a sense of creativity that I don't feel like I've ever felt necessarily in a game before. One of the big things that, you know, people were wondering with Tears of the Kingdom was it going to have dungeons? Because while you had the divine beasts in Breath of the Wild, you didn't have dungeons in Breath of the Wild. And I could talk about the dungeons in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom because dungeons are back. They might not be in a traditional sense in which you get like a new ability at the end of them, but they're deeply rooted in solving puzzles in a large confined area. And just exploring these different dungeons and seeing how the dungeons actually play out differently from one another, as there are strong elements that are prevalent in one style of dungeon that might not exist in another style of dungeon. It's very interesting because it always keeps you on your toes. It always keeps you thinking. It always keeps you trying to solve the next riddle. And the fact that you have to incorporate those new mechanics that we've learned from this game, such as the Ultra Hand, such as the Fuse mechanic, in order to progress through these dungeons. It's really invigorating. You know, it feels very different. It feels very fresh because you have a level of control over these puzzles and over these scenarios within the dungeons that you've never actually had before in a Legend of Zelda game. Beyond the dungeons, I could sit here and talk about the chasms. There's chasms in this game where you dive deep down into it, into like the pits of hell, and then it's all black. It's all darkness around you. But you can use these little items in order to light up the darkness and explore these massive, dank, smelly, I'm assuming they're smelly, there's no smell-o-vision in this game, these caverns that are just full of surprises, full of secrets, and full of really hard enemies, because the gloom, which is a negative thing that has taken over the land of Hyrule, is taking over these chasms, and you have these stronger enemies than you would face normally. You have more resource management in terms of your hearts, because you can actually lose hearts completely down in these chasms that end up getting restored when you hit the surface level or a certain point within these chasms. But these chasms really expand upon the game, because not only do we have the overworld, not only do we have all the sky islands and all the sky stuff you could do in this game, not only do we have the dungeons within this game, but now we have this underworld within the game with these chasms that's really interesting to explore and very unique to explore. I could also talk about another new thing within the game, and that's the caves. You know, now there's caves within these games where you come across a certain area that's like a hole in the wall, and there's a full cave system. These caves vary in terms of what you can do within them. You can get, you know, different resources and stuff like that you can use to craft new weapons that you can fuse with, or you could go in there and you know, find this little weird toad thing and kill it, and then give these toad guts to a person of interest who really wants them. These caves can be really intricate as well. Some of them are pretty small and shallow, but some of them almost feel like a little mini exploration that you're going on within this game. And it keeps things fresh throughout, because you're always wondering when you're going to come across a new cave or a new chasm or anything like that. I could sit here and talk about the exploration of this game, you know, because there's a ton of exploration. The exploration has been so just obviously expanded upon, and that's something that I absolutely love, because you could just be walking around, and the world that you're in, the land of Hyrule, the sky islands, the underground chasms, the caves, the dungeons, they all feel very alive. But more importantly, the land of Hyrule feels very alive. And I didn't really have that sensation that much in Breath of the Wild. There were long points where it was like you wouldn't see anything or anyone, or, you know, places being rebuilt and things happening within this, and, you know, people coming together, and, you know, people walking along the trails with their own side missions to give you. And in Tears of the Kingdom, it's very prevalent. The exploration rewards you by coming across new areas, coming across new shrines, coming across new enemy types, coming across new weapon types, coming across different things that you wouldn't expect. And like I said, I played this game for quite a bit over the past week and a half or so, but I was experiencing things on my Australian eShop download that I never experienced on my other playthrough. Meeting characters that I never came across. Going to places that I felt like I had looked through this area. I had looked through this area pretty heavily and explored upon it, and just finding new things, finding worthwhile things. The exploration is just top notch within this game. I could sit here and talk about the more refined combat, because now you have this fuse mechanic that allows you to create your own weapons on the fly. Yes, your weapons are still gonna break, man. There's still weapon degradation in this game. But the fact that you could take weapons and then take different items or take different stones or gemstones in order to create new weapons, or zonite technology in order to create these new weapons, it constantly keeps things fresh throughout, because you're always trying to come up with a new weapon type. You might get a stick and you're like, well, what's this stick gonna do? But you attach a rock to that stick. Now you have a more powerful weapon. Now you have something that'll protect you in this game. And I feel like the combat has just been refined from this aspect as well. The targeting feels a little bit better. The lock-on system feels a little bit better. But more importantly, they give you so many different ways to do the combat within this game. Whether you want to do an up-close attack, or you want to do a combination of arrows and stuff like that, attach different things to your arrows to make them stronger on the fly, attach all sorts of things to your weapons to make them stronger, fuse things together. It's absolutely brilliant. And I could sit here and talk about the presentation of the game, because yeah, there was lots of questions about this $70 price tag. And yes, there is slowdown in this game. It targets 900p 30 frames per second. And sometimes it dips below that. You know, it's on old hardware, man. This is decade-old hardware at this point now, in terms of at least the chipset within it. So unfortunately, this game is probably pushing the Nintendo Switch, I would have to imagine, to its absolute limits. You know, this is a huge game in terms of presentation. But if you're able to look past the frame rate, the presentation is phenomenal. It's got the AMD FSR 1.0 upscaling, so everything looks nice and sharp when you're playing it in handheld mode. Looks gorgeous, gorgeous on the Nintendo Switch OLED. The music's been redone in some parts. The voices all sound really good for the most part. The environmental sounds are all really great. And I could sit here and gush about the presentation, and, you know, dig deep into the Sky Islands and how these are like little mini areas up into themselves, you know, and you could do so much on them, and this, that, and the other. I could do all of those things, but at the end of the day, the reason I refuse to review this game is because no matter what I say, no matter what I show you in this video, it's not gonna click. It's not gonna You're not going to have that epiphany. You're not going to have that aha moment just from my words and just from my video sharing. This is a game that you have to experience for yourself, because everyone's adventure in Tears of the Kingdom is going to be completely different than another person's adventure. Sure, you could go about things in a certain way and emulate what someone else is doing, but as far as like solving the puzzles, solving the shrines, this game just takes everything to a whole new level, because there's always been puzzles in the Legend of Zelda games. There's always been puzzles in a lot of video games and a lot of action adventure games. But the thing of it is there's always one way to solve that puzzle. It's only one way at the end of the day. It's just a matter of putting two and two together to figure that out. But with Tears of the Kingdom, the freedom that you have in this game, it's a very different type of freedom than you have in a Grand Theft Auto or an open world game in that style, or even a Skyrim, because the way you could solve the puzzle can be completely different from person to person. Look, I have made some half-assed contraptions in this game, and I have realized that sometimes that's what works. What one person does to solve one puzzle is not going to be what the other person does to solve a puzzle. Sure, there's probably a preferred method, but there's 100 other methods that you could try out, and some of them are going to work. And I've never felt that level of freedom within a video game. I've never felt that level of creativity in a video game that's an action adventure game. that yes, you have to get from point A to point B, but how you get there can vary so much from person to person, so much from playthrough to playthrough, so much from individual to individual. And because of that, there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I could say, there's nothing I could show you that would convince you otherwise. You have to experience this game for yourself. And within, you know, the first hour or so, you're going to realize that it's just a game that is captivating. It's a game that's actually different. You know, it's a game that actually does something different. If you hated Breath of the Wild, you're not going to love Tears of the Kingdom. I'm pretty sure of it. It has a very similar structure. It has a very similar style. There's going to be complaints about the frame rate. There's going to be complaints about, oh, well, they're reusing Hyrule, but they're really not. Like, yes, it has the same sort of, you know, shape, and, you know, some things are in the same locations, but everything has been changed because of the upheaval. Everything has been changed because of what happens within the story of the game. So even if you're a diehard cartographer, I believe that's the word that you use for someone who like makes a map, even if you're a diehard cartographer of Breath of the Wild, that's not going to help you in this game because things have been moved around. Things are different now. I can't review this game. I refuse to review this game because you have to experience it for yourself. Is it perfect? No. I mean, the frame rate does kind of dip from time to time. There's some wonky physics that happen from time to time. Sometimes, you know, creating something with the Ultra Hand mechanic feels a bit wonky. But man, this is just an experience. This is something that I want to spend hundreds of hours in. You know, I've already put quite a bit of time into the two versions I've been playing of the game, but I don't regret it because it's been so different. Even if I go along the same path, different things happen within those paths. Different things happen within those playthroughs. And it's amazing. And there's so much more to the game. That's the real thing to take away from this. Beyond just the fact that you have this level of freedom that you can't really put into words for a review, is that there's so much stuff and I'm just scratching the surface with it. I wouldn't be able to do it justice, I feel. So I just wanted to turn the camera on, tell you guys why I'm refusing to review this game. And hopefully you understand. I feel like if you've been playing the game, you understand it. Maybe you just got your copy today. I am uploading this on the launch day, the North American launch date. Like I said, been playing it on the old switcheroonie here. So we got a game over screen. You know, what are we going to do? Let me know in the comment section down below if you plan on picking up Tears of the Kingdom, though. And if so, how you've been enjoying it. If you're not picking it up, you know, why not? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit the bell notification as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.